We are back. Bronx Roots, Michael Preminger, David Hubler, and Ralph Tyko. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and Michael is tardy, but David is here. How are you, David Hubler?
Okay, I'm fine. And you?
I couldn't be better. That's
good
news and the bad news.
Mm-hmm.
All wrapped into one. I couldn't be better. I am what I am. David, we had such a good conversation off the air about a documentary that we both watched. You had taped it, and it was on CNN last night. It blew me away, and we talked briefly about it. It was about the triplets, and before we talk about their situation, it reminded you of another situation in Ireland. These triplets were adopted early on and split up, and it was through an agency, and it tracks what happened to them and why the agency was split them up and didn't tell anyone about it, or didn't tell the families that they were triplets, that they had brothers out there. And they would do, on top of that, they were doing experiments, not experiments so much as studies that traced their upbringing. They had people follow them throughout their youth. It was incredibly interesting, but it reminded you, as I said, about Ireland. And why don't you talk about that a little bit before?
Well, yeah, that was a film based on a book which I had read, and I can't think of the title of either one of them right now. But and this was like, I guess it was in the 30s and 40s, maybe earlier too. But unwed women would have their children delivered at some of these religious retreats, so to speak. And the mother would then be allowed to leave, and the children would remain in this orphanage, whereupon they would try to place them for adoption. The problem was that the mothers were never allowed to see their children again, or never allowed to even know where they were or what they had become, despite their attempts to go through the religious order to find out some information about them. And it was a terribly upsetting film and book, because the mother and the daughter each had tried in her own way to find the other, and in the end, in this case, they were successful. It took a freelance writer to intervene, who had been an investigative reporter, and it was a very moving film. And there have been so many outrages at so many of these nurseries and orphanages over the years that it's really a disgrace to even see what went on so long ago. In the case of the triplets, they were separated. First of all, they were identical triplets, which is really the key to the whole story, because the first one, the interesting story, he enrolls in this community college, and as he's walking along campus, another student comes up and calls him by a different name and says, "Oh, it's good to see you back." And he says, "What do you mean? You know what I mean? I've never been here before." "Oh, you're kidding me, kidding around." Anyway, it turns out that, of course, it was one of his twin brothers who had been at the community college the year before.
And I find that to be incredibly coincidental.
Yes, I know it is. It is, isn't it? Yeah, you're right.
They grew up in a different part of the city, different economical levels. Their parents were all of different things. And it was all arranged by this adoption agency. Go on when they find each other. It was amazing. It made the
they lived. The three of them actually lived in the New York area. One of them was up in Westchester County, I recall. Scarsdale, right? And that's a upscale community. And then the other two were, I think, from Brooklyn and Long Island. But the two, well, you talk about being a coincidence. Now, I don't remember which one it was, but it was a community college that was not in the New York area, if I recall correctly. It was,
Now, that amazed me. And, I'm wondering if the people doing the experiment, tracking their lives, had something to do with introducing the two families to that college. Because that would be the only other connect, and the chances of that happening, that must have been, that itself, a community college outside of New York. You would think if they were going to, you go to city or whatever, if you lived in City College, if you lived in New York and you wanted to go the community college route. But to go 45 minutes outside of the city and meet, that was an incredible coincidence.
Yes, it was. And it was what made the coincidence even more amazing was that it was just a student on campus who happened to be walking by and saw what he thought was his old friend from the year before. So, there were a lot of, I guess, psychologists, child psychologists. I thought this was an absolutely wonderful opportunity to study these kids who have been separated. It's that old nurture versus nature. What creates a person? What goes into making their whole makeup? And these three guys were identical. I mean, boy, you could not tell them apart. And I've mentioned that I knew a pair of twins that I still cannot tell apart. But what's really weird about this thing is the show, and I guess I'm going to give a little bit of it away, for those who haven't seen it, is that one of the brothers commits suicide. There was no real probing of what led him to do that. I see CNN then did have two of them on as a promo. They were on in the morning, one morning during the week in one of those morning programs.
Good Morning America.
Like that. So they had the two survivors on, and they still look extremely alike, despite one having more hair than the other. But if you look at their faces, and even wear glasses that look alike. I didn't see that portion, that segment rather, but it was a fascinating. And then you just think how difficult it must have been for the parents to accept this, that they each had one of the three, and I think
neither of them none of the parents were told that there were other siblings.
Right.
And one of them was so outraged by that that because they tried to blow it off as, well, it's hard to get people to accept more than one child. And that parent said, I would have gladly taken all three of them.
That's right. Yeah. Think how different their lives would have been.
A diabolical experiment or study, and they did an interview with one of the psychologists who was extremely well-to-do because she went through her apartment with the Picassos and all that. And what got me about that, and I don't know that many therapists, but she was so detached from the feelings of the family, of what went down. It was just a study to her.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Did you notice that too? That she said,
I did. She maintained her. Yeah, she maintained her professional attitude about the whole thing, and I guess it's hard to blame her for that. I mean, you can't get too personally involved with your clients in those sorts of situations. It's probably a lot easier to detach than to go through the rest of your life trying to figure out where each and every one of your clients went to, how they wound up. But and of course, for them, it was a golden opportunity to observe, and there were so many similarities among the three of them. They all smoked the same brand of cigarettes, which I thought somebody should have said, well, you shouldn't be smoking at all, but nobody said that.
Right.
On the show.
That's true. In those days, in the 70s, and I remember having watched the show that was on was a Phil Donahue show that I remember having watched in the 70s when that was.
Oh yes, that's right. That clip. Yeah.
Yes, and as some other psychologists pointed out, they should have been more concerned about what the differences were between them, not the similarities.
Yeah.
And that came to light when the three of them opened a business together that was thriving, and they don't get into why it went downhill too much, but the only reference to that by one of the brothers was, we had a difference in work ethics.
Yeah.
So it all went downhill, and they talked about the mother having some early on mental problems, and the kid, that was tragic. The twin or the triplet who took his own life. That really made me shake.
I mean, it happened so abruptly in the film that you say, well, wait a minute, back up here. What did I miss?
Right.
Because you don't know. You don't, and obviously, I mean, you can't know for sure unless the third member had left detailed notes as to why he did this. But even if he did, it wasn't shown on the film. I thought some aspect of that should have been explained a bit better, because up until that point, you look at these three guys, and they're lovey-dovey, for want of a better term. They're really happy to be with one another, and they laugh and they giggle with one another. They dressed alike. And
then life got in the way. They all got married. They all had aspirations of,
That's right.
Folks gets in the way a lot in life. I don't know.
I think two of the three adopted parents were really sort of lower middle class, I think. I'm not, maybe wrong there, but they were not college educated. The sons, I didn't, and that's another thing. I was just curious. The two, they met each other. They found each other on this community college campus, but there was no indication as to what happened afterwards in terms of their education, even when they knew one another, and the three of them. I was curious to know whether the family in Scarsdale, for example, encouraged their son to go on to college, and maybe the other, and it sounds very elitist to say, but maybe one of the, or both of the other parents chose not to push their child, their son, into a college situation. I don't know. Those are the kind of things.
And you can't always blame the parents if
no.
the kid and the kid doesn't respond to
right.
it.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, no question about that. But that, too, was another point that was missing. I mean, what? Suddenly you've got these three guys in business together after playing. It showed a lot of scenes showed them running around, playing together, but there was no substance behind that. Is what I'm trying to get at. I think
Sure.
I'm just, I thought, what made these three guys tick once they knew they had two other identical brothers. I mean,
I wonder, and I'm going to ask you as a fellow Jew, if the thought of Mengele crossed your mind.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. You're right, Ralph. It certainly did. But my thinking was, thank goodness they didn't try any physical experiments. They weren't even experimenting so much as they were observing, as you said.
But they were controlling, and they did control not to have these kids have them grow up separately.
Right. Because
so that's what made me think of Mengele.
Yeah, I know. You couldn't help but not. Yeah, it was, and certainly by not informing their adopted parents, that closed the door to any suggestion or thought that I'm raising a child and that he has two other identical brothers out there somewhere. I know from a family experience, a member of my family suddenly discovered that he had two half sisters. This was when he was a grown man. He never had heard of them. He never knew them. And the two sisters apparently had, I forget how the connection was. They got in touch with him. I don't know. Maybe it was one of these social
Probably
media.
one of these DNA testing things.
Yeah, it might have been that.
I had
it might have been that.
Similar happened to a cousin of mine who, through taking a DNA test, I don't think he discovered that he had a half brother, that his dad had an affair with a woman.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Same thing in this case. Yeah. And the two sisters apparently did want to have some kind of communication with him, but after the initial conversation, the adult male chose not to have any further contact with him.
Boy, that is almost an identical story to my cousin. I'll say it, my cousin Mike, who went through a DNA testing. Interesting. He is he is like 1/8 Nigerian, or one.
Really? Nigerian? Yeah.
Nigerian in his DNA. My DNA came out, I'm 100% Jewish, and I've got 100% of the neurosis that goes with it. So,
I haven't done that yet. There's some that are better than others, they say.
They do, and I'm trying to think of the one. Ancestor.com is the one I used. And
yeah, the one I've heard was the most comprehensive was that 23andMe, but I don't know. As I said, I haven't tried any one of them, although I've been tempted to do it, because my only surviving cousin from my father's side, he and I know very little about our respective parents and grandparents.
Yeah.
We know about our
parents,
but we don't know.
I can remember the shock of when I found out that I wasn't adopted.
Yes. Well, my son insists that he was adopted. He keeps telling us he was adopted. He was.
I'm sure. So I'm worried about Michael. Michael hasn't checked in. I just off the top of my head, and I'm also trying to find a way to get a Bronx hook into this thing, a Bronx roots hook.
Well, Scarsdale is close to the Bronx, very close to the
that'll
Bronx.
do it.
It's it's one of the areas one aspires to when one lives in the Bronx and has made it out of the neighborhood, so to speak.
That's true. Scarsdale, it was the original. There was a book, something about. That was the diet, Scarsdale.
The Scarsdale diet, Herman Tarnauer.
Right.
Yeah, the one who was killed by the school teacher here in Northern Virginia.
Well, I thought he was killed because he had to eat school cooking.
Well, no, yeah. Maybe then he would have killed himself.
Right. Which I so miss having Kevorkian on my speed dial, just in case a bad day. May he rest in soul, rest in peace. So the second thing I wanted to talk to you about, because you're a Virginian, and we've had a week of
our new governor.
More disgraceful politics. This is a med school student, the governor of Virginia, when this happened, 25-year-old man. Can he, there's no excuse for this. This was a form,
No, there's no excuse for it, but when you go back, I felt the same way about Kavanaugh when he was being grilled for this attempted rape or whatever, sexual abuse of this teenage girl when he was a teenager. I felt it was irrelevant. I would hate to be held to account for everything I did when I was, say, 16 or 17 or 18. And that
but you're not running for office, and you.
I know, but even so, I'm just saying. Well, and look, Kavanaugh was confirmed in any case. So is it so much different from what allegedly Northam did? Because now he's saying that wasn't him in the picture.
Well, the cover-up and the lie is more disgraceful.
Yes, it is. Well, and of course the interesting thing is that the Republicans get nothing out of it. I don't know who blew the whistle on this deal, because the Republicans certainly dug deeply when he was running for office, and they didn't come up with this. But because the lieutenant governor is also a Democrat, even if he steps down, what they get is an African-American governor, which would be our second African-American governor. And as far as I know, I can't recall another state that has had an African-American governor. I know Virginia was the first, but I can't think of any other. But so it doesn't give the Republicans any step up, because had it been a split ticket kind of thing where a Republican lieutenant governor, I think it happened in New York a couple of years. It happened when Elliot Spitzer had to step down as governor. His lieutenant governor was a Republican, I believe, and she took over. But in Virginia, it's not going to make very much of a difference in the sense that you'll still have a Democrat at the top of the state government, and Virginia has one of the quirkiest gubernatorial laws in this country, if not the quirkiest. You can't succeed yourself. So 1 4-year term and you're out. Zip. You can run subsequent to another governor doing his term, but you can't succeed yourself. And a lot of people think that that's a terribly awkward law. It shortens your term, of course, and you have to try to squeeze in everything you want to do in 4 years. And the budget cycle only comes around every other year, so you really can't do all that much. I don't know whether that's by design or what, but it's strange, because more and more Virginia turns blue. These crazy laws seem to stick around. Northam was being pilloried for being in favor of a late-term abortion. Now, the man is a pediatrician, so he knows something about abortions and late-term abortions. The Republicans also had a hissy fit over that, which predated.
There was something going on in New York State about that, Governor.
Yeah. Cuomo has come out in favor of it. I think government should stay out of the healthcare business in this respect, at least. Leave it. Women, doctors. That's where it should be decided, but not.
Right.
It shouldn't be. There should be no definitive law about when the baby's a person, when he's not a person, or she's not a person. I think the whole thing is silly. And that, by the way, was one of the reasons why your favorite politician got elected to the White House. A lot of people, pro-life people, wanted him because he was going to reverse Roe v. Wade.
Well, Pence is really set on that. That's what.
Oh yeah. Well, did you hear Sarah Huckabee the other day saying it was God's will?
God wanted him to be president.
Yeah.
This is getting out of hand.
It really is.
There is something. I don't know which amendment it is. You would know better than I. Separation of church and state.
Yeah, that's right. It's right there in the Bill of Rights, if I recall. Oh, no, it's in the original Constitution.
Why should this even be an issue?
It shouldn't be. It should not be an issue.
It should come up.
No, it should not come up at all. It's only an individual's business what goes on between him and her and the doctor. And I find it all reprehensible that the same people that are so worried about a 2.5-inch fetus in favor of the death penalty, for one.
Right, save the baby. Love the fetus, hate the baby.
Yeah. And, of course, are against welfare.
It is fetus and baby in the dictionary. They wasted all that space for another word. It must mean something, that a baby is not a fetus and a fetus is not a baby.
Well, yeah.
And if nothing else, if you could just if we could just think in those terms, it would be easy. But again, religion comes into it, and if it's gonna come into it, why don't they tax religion, all religions?
I'm in favor of that. I mean, the religious institutions get away scot-free. They don't pay real estate tax. They don't pay any income tax. I mean, I think it's criminal, frankly. But we're talking the same tune. We're singing the same tune here.
It's a strange world, and just trying to simplify it would be nice. And I think doing a few little things, that it's all constitutional. Yep. So
I know.
We're not talking anything radical.
I was, I've looked back, and I can recall, I don't know if you remember this, but I recall when they added the words "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance. Then there were some kids in my class that threw because they had already memorized the old version, and now they had to memorize a new version with 2 additional words.
There were lyrics in a Paul Simon song, pledging allegiance to the wall, if I remember.
Now we said it every day in school, and at that time nobody thought anything of it, even when they added "under God," one nation under God. I have a lot of these
that started something, and that should not have been added. But then again, our national anthem is a war song, so.
Well, it was a British drinking song at first. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's where the melody came from. Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah. So singing that, and the way it's butchered these days, it's just awful. I mean, they say it's a very tough song to sing, and since I can't sing at all, I never try. In fact, in school I was a listener in auditorium. I was not supposed to sing the national anthem.
Well, they told me I had to move my lips in the 6th grade choir, and that pissed my mother off. She came to school.
I kid my wife because she can't carry a tune either. I say even when we go to Yankee Stadium, they tell you to be quiet.
Would Mrs. Hubler please be quiet for this? We're going to sing the national anthem.
Yes.
They come out.
The woman in section 131, row C, C2. Shh.
Zugnished.
All right. Well, we can wrap this up now. I think Mark's not going to be coming.
All right, David. This was fun. Missing Michael.
I will try to get in touch with him.
In there with Scarsdale.
We did it.
We did it. God bless us.
No, okay.
Well, my friend.
Speak to you next Tuesday night.
Next Tuesday night, we're going to have, and let's cross-promote. Tuesday night, we'll be, both of us, on Hal Bach's show on this very network. And we're going to have, one of our guests is going to be, not only are we going to talk about the upcoming now Super Bowl, that'll be tonight, as this is recorded, but we're going to talk about, one of our guests is going to be Gump Worsley's daughter, Leanna. Now, David and I are one of the folks from the past who lived their lives in Madison Square Garden, and hockey was a big part of it all, and Gump Worsley was the goalie of our New York Rangers.
Absolutely.
That's you. But they took him till '95 to win a cup, if I remember.
Yeah, win the Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. But so we're going to be talking about that on the Hal Bach show on Tuesday night. That will be published as well on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And these are ironically David Hubler's words, setting the standards for podcast talk radio. And that's what we do. We set the standards. I think we set them damn high. This show is no exception. Thank you, David, for being here.
Okay, no problem. We'll speak to you on Tuesday then.
Hope Michael is okay.
Yeah.
Well, everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody.